Indeed.
This is
Oh,
MIP.
I'm sorry.
Get woke.
Indeed. From Russia with Love. We're joined now by Max Bergmann of the Moscow Project. Max, how are you today, man?
Doing all right. How are you?
Just fine. As always, a pleasure to have you on board with us. So let's start with what is what's some of the news of the past, I guess, 48 hours has been. Um, the Mueller team is looking more closely, apparently, at Roger Stone.
Yep. Um, we've sort of known for a long time that Roger Stone's quote unquote time in the barrel was probably coming relatively soon, just given by the people that Mueller was talking to. So he was talking to a lot of Stone aides. And Stone's role, I think, is pretty important to the case for collusion
Right.
between the Trump campaign and Russia. And the reason why is because Roger Stone, longtime Trump associate, was he wasn't a quote unquote officially part of the campaign. He was early on, and then then separated from Trump, but we know he was in constant contact with Trump and members of the Trump campaign during the election. We also know that in August, Roger Stone wrote a tweet
All right, ladies
essentially
and gentlemen, as
previewing that
promised,
John
here
Podesta's time in the
to talk
barrel
about
was
his
coming.
new
Right.
book,
And this is in
The
August of
Making of the
2016.
President
The hack
2016, How
of
Donald Trump
Podesta's emails
Orchestrated a
wasn't released
Revolution.
until
Also
October
join us on
7th.
Facebook Live,
Podesta, no one had
facebook.com
any idea what
slash
Stone was
Make It
talking about.
Plain.
So he clearly had
Roger,
advanced knowledge of this Russian hack, of this Russian theft, and that it was going to be released by WikiLeaks. And so I think what Mueller is looking at is seeing if he's the major connector, one of the major nodes for the collusion, and linking with WikiLeaks and maybe with GRU Russian hackers.
so we had Roger Stone on a couple of years ago, and before we leave, I'm going to find that audio because he actually lied to me on air.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just revisit that because if I'm not mistaken, he also said something about who he was in touch with. Because I mean that's an important piece of testimony. Brittany, if you could help me find it, I just sent you that clip. And while she's looking for that, I want to continue with our discussion. So, is the speculation? Do we know on Mueller's part that he was in touch with WikiLeaks, or that he was in touch with someone in the Russian government itself?
Well, we know he was in touch with both, in effect, because somehow a lot of his correspondence over Twitter has become public. So he was back channeling to Julian Assange, to WikiLeaks. We also know he was back channeling to Guccifer, and Guccifer was sort of the front for Russian intelligence operators who are these Russian hackers. So he was corresponding with both. And then the question, so, Stone's defense is that, well, they were just online. I was just going back and forth with them. And I think what Mueller is trying to identify is that, no, this wasn't just sort of happenstance, that this was actually Stone was deliberately involved in this Russian conspiracy against the United States, and he was seeking to further that conspiracy. Mueller has already proven or demonstrated that, through his past indictments of more than 30 Russian individuals and companies, that there's this Russian conspiracy. And so Stone is participating in the furtherance of that. Then I think that's some of the criminal charges that will be brought against him.
There was also some reporting by Rachel Maddow last night. Max Bergmann with us, folks at the Moscow Project. Give us a call, 866-99-SIRIUS. And let me just say this, too. Max is interested, as you and I are, in this topic. And this is probably the biggest and the most felonious of the Trump scandals. It's interesting how even it has been overshadowed by everything else that's going on. I mean, as if Trump's administration could do any worse. Also, folks, we have a bit of breaking news. Apparently, another explosive device has been discovered in Florida. Um, and and honestly, maybe Trump welcomes this other coverage because it distracts from Mueller. But that being that being said, um, Rachel Maddow reported last night that apparently, I guess it was yesterday, there was some trouble in the grand jury room
Hmm.
with a witness who wasn't being very cooperative. Have you heard anything about that?
So I haven't seen that specifically, but what I think what's clear, we saw this earlier this year when one of Stone's close associates, this guy Sam Nunberg, effectively had meltdowns on national television after he got a subpoena from Robert Mueller to appear in front of the grand jury, and
Right.
went on literally every single cable news channel, and that I think there's a lot of people are involved in this, and then suddenly when they look and they realize that they have information that is going to be really bad for people who they used to work with, then they don't want to cooperate, or they want to cooperate as little as possible. And so it's not surprising that in the grand jury room, suddenly someone who's going to testify as a witness then balks because they don't want to betray their close associate. But what we have here is a criminal conspiracy, and so that is can be difficult to untangle. But that is what Mueller and what these witnesses and why he's in pain bringing people in front of the grand jury. And so in trying to untangle a criminal conspiracy, some people are going to want to cover up that criminal conspiracy because they might be implicated as well.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so where are we now? Do you have any idea? I mean, I know we're talking about Stone right
Yeah.
now, but in terms of some of the other witnesses that have gone before the grand jury, I mean, do you think that Mueller pretty much, because they're trying to suggest this case is coming to a close, you think he pretty much has it wrapped up? Is it ready to come to an end? What do you think?
So what I think is that Robert Mueller is not oblivious to the political attacks on him by the president of the United States and
Okay.
by the threats against Rod Rosenstein, and and to his investigation. So this, I think, one of Mueller's problems is literally everywhere he looks, he finds things that merit investigation, that look like potential crimes, whether that's sketchy meetings in the Seychelles or potential official corruption with Michael Cohen and running sort of a bribery operation connected to the White House. Everywhere he looks, he's finding crimes.
Right.
So how do you sort of cut all those investigative threads, cut them, tie them together, and end an investigation? I think is really difficult. My guess is the current status. It feels to me like we're a little bit in the eye of the hurricane. Things sort of feel a little bit more calm than they had been, back in August and September. But part of the reason is because now he's got cooperation from Paul Manafort, the campaign chairman, cooperation from the deputy campaign chairman, Rick Gates, as well as Michael Flynn, the national security advisor. Michael Cohen is now cooperating with the Mueller investigation. And so Mueller is probably very far along, and I think would have to have a break glass scenario that if there's going to be, Trump's going to try to fire him, fire Sessions or Rod Rosenstein, the attorney general, the deputy attorney general, and therefore put Mueller under threat, that Mueller may move with lots of indictments. And last point I just make is if you read the indictments from this summer, where he indicted these 12 Russian GRU, the Russian intelligence operatives, these hackers, the indictment reads as if it's incomplete because it's indicting these Russians, but then you see all these other Americans participating, cooperating to further the Russian effort.
Right.
And those indictments have to be coming at some point. And I sort of always imagine this as sort of unfolding the way, a good mob movie does, with sort of this penultimate scene and everyone sort of gets arrested at the same time. And I think that's likely how he would proceed. So there's, I think, I think he has a lot more that he has to investigate more. I think there's a lot more on the Russian intelligence side of this, trying to uproot Russian intelligence officers that are operating here in the United States. He's done some of that. But when it comes to Trump and the collusion, I think he's very, very far along. And I think, if anything, he'll probably be ready to move on that as soon as the election's over.
All right. Max Bergman with us. So we've got the Roger Stone clip, I believe. So we want to get Brittany, if you would play that for us, please. Here we go. This is Roger Stone when he was on with us.
Yes, and that is entirely false. Frankly, if I were the New York Times, I'd be very careful because it's libelous. I would welcome an investigation, Mark, a full, fair, independent investigation, say by a special prosecutor or by the Congress, to clear this whole thing up. Because I can tell you, speaking for myself, I had no contacts with anybody from Russia or anyone representing the Russians or the Russian state or the Russian intelligence. I don't have any contacts in Russia. I don't have a Russian girlfriend. I don't even drink Russian vodka anymore because I'm afraid people will talk.
So that's part of it, but I think there's another one too. Yeah, can we hear that
Put
one?
up or shut up. Where is the proof? We have
Well,
emails.
honestly, I don't have it, but it's out there, Roger. I'm just trying to give you every
Out there.
opportunity.
It's not
If you
out
want,
there.
if you want to acquit yourself, fine. But I'm a little concerned. You're saying this, and then next week we might hear some doggone phone calls of you, man. I'm just like, I'm not gonna. You telling me I'm not gonna hear that? There's nothing that's gonna come back.
Nothing whatsoever. You know what? If they have any proof whatsoever, indict me. But if you don't have the proof, issue an apology, because this is getting tedious. Let me be very clear. I had no contacts with the Russians. There is no proof to the contrary because it's simply not true. So let's let the process take its place. Let's have a full federal investigation.
Right.
And let's see the proof in a court of law. That's how the United States works.
Max Bergman of the Moscow Project. Your reaction to what we just heard from Roger Stone?
Well, he's getting his wish. There's
he asked for it, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. It's when was this clip? Was it back in 2016?
Yeah, I think
February 17th, 2017.
February. What was that again, Brittany?
Wait, it had to be
2017.
February of 2017. Is that right?
Yeah.
February 2017. February 2017. Yeah.
So I think the context there and the timing is that in the beginning of 2017, January, February, was suddenly when everyone became woke to Russian interference. That's when the intelligence community released this report and stories were flying out. So Stone, saying, let's have a special prosecutor, let's have an investigation. What he didn't know at the time is that there, in fact, was an FBI investigation going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we didn't know. That's when James Comey, a month later in March, announced that there was. But now, of course, we have a special investigation, and it indeed looks like charges are going to be brought against him. The other thing I would say is that when he's just frankly lying when he said he wasn't in contact with anyone, any Russians or anyone representing the Russian government, because when he was in contact with Guccifer, which was clearly known to be a Russian front for this hacking division, had been reported in 2016. That had been out there. Roger Stone knew what he was doing. And so, what we have here with Roger Stone is a guy whose entire life in politics, and this is what he would describe himself as a dirty trickster. Nixon White House,
right.
And that is his imprimatur. And so the ultimate dirty trick, how about colluding with a hostile foreign power, hostile foreign intelligence service to help win an election? And so I think Stone's credibility is frankly zero. But he got what he was asking for back in February 2017, and it doesn't look like it's going to turn out too good for him.
Well, you're right. He's a Nixon acolyte, and look, you know, uh, I think it's just like a junkie, Max. The addict tries to beat the habit,
Yeah.
or not stop the habit. They can overcome it. I think it's the same with him. It's like, listen, we in Nixon's own words, botched. So
Hmm.
we're gonna get it right this time. You
Yeah.
know, Don. He's probably telling Don, Nixon, it was botched, but we can do it the right way. Um, so yeah, I think that's exactly what's going. Not to mention Nixon interfered in the Paris Peace Accords,
Yeah.
and Lyndon Johnson, if he had wanted to, could have ended his presidential aspirations right then and there. I'm still not quite clear on why Lyndon Johnson didn't just go ahead and do that. But be that as it may, um, let's talk about something else. The midterms.
Yeah.
Is Russia interfering? Why should we be so naive as to think they wouldn't interfere in the upcoming midterms?
So, two big developments happened in this past week. Last Friday, there was another sort of criminal indictment that came from the Department of Justice, which indicated that this internet research agency, this troll farm,
Right.
that operates out of St. Petersburg, Russia, that Mueller already had back in February indicted 13 people for their interference in the 2016 election. What they identified is that there's a more than $10 million per year effort ongoing to interfere in the 2018 election. So the Russians haven't stopped, and that is from the U.S. government and from U.S. intelligence officials identifying that. So we know Russian interference is continuing, and I think that's on multiple fronts. Number one, they're still trying to sow discord online. So we see things about the caravan or about other things that can sort of sow discord in the United States. Russian trolls, Russian operatives online are trying to promote that and amplify that.
Right.
The other thing is that there's been lots of indications of Russians trying to hack into Democratic campaigns, Claire McCaskill's campaign, for example, and that is extremely worrying. But the last thing is, and this was a huge story on Vox that came out yesterday, and I recommend it really highly to everyone to go read, which is that our voting systems are inherently insecure. That it is, and given that how we operate our elections, in which states have run the election systems, then it goes down to the county and then sometimes the township. Well, you're basically relying on the cybersecurity capabilities of a person in sort of a small town to fend off GRU hackers. That is the kind of asymmetric scenario that we have, and so we have indications from an NSA document that was leaked after the 2016 election that Russians have in fact found ways to mess with our voting systems. And so I think the best way for individuals to take action against this is to vote early. To not rely on election day, where that is sort of where suddenly, where basically the Russians are able to potentially create a traffic jam in a number of different locations by taking down voting systems and other things like that. So vote. If you have an opportunity to vote before election day, I would do it, because the major indictment here is of the Republican Congress and of the Trump administration for not acting.
Right.
They have been very slow to address this. The actions that they have taken or have been way too late to actually do anything for this election.
Right.
And this should have been something that they took on right away in January 2017 to get our voting infrastructure up to speed for this election. They haven't done it. It's been a dereliction of their responsibilities to protect the United States. And so our election systems are still exposed.
Last question, Max Bergmann, the MoscowProject.org. Do you think there's any possibility Russia's behind these pipe bombs?
No, I that would be an act of war, and I think that would cross all sorts of thresholds. I don't think they need to be behind a discord in the United States, because the right wing in America has been activated and amplified into a very violent course. We saw that in Charlottesville. We saw, half the things that come out of the president's mouth. And so I think the Russians probably are amplifying, online, trying to sow discord. They like to see, Americans at each other's throats. That's one of their main objectives, to divide America,
Right.
make America look bad in the eyes of the world. But sometimes they don't really have to do very much because, those on the right can take care of it for them.
Well, I'll agree with you up to this point with respect. If it comes out to be the conspiracy that the right wing is promoting, that someone on the left is doing it to make it look like a false flag, then I'm going to say it's Russia. Because why would somebody on the left do it? If this ends up being politically to their benefit, then that's when I'll wonder if it's Russia or not. But we'll see. Max Bergmann, the MoscowProject.org. Thanks as always, Max, okay?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Always enjoy our conversation. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, get ready for the weekend. If all minds are clear, we'll do it again Monday. It has been made plain.